on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC reality check, and you don't see my pretty sexy face, so you know I'm not alone. More NXT stuff, so guess who we've got?
The one, the only. Countdown ended. Jake DeMarco, that's right. I didn't get paid as much as Jim Carrey did for Batman Forever, which was $20 million. Holy, wow. I wouldn't have said no to that either.
That's a very interesting way to let everybody know we were talking about Batman before we started recording.
That's right, but think about it. He got paid $20 million for that, The Cable Guy, Liar, Liar, Me, Myself, Irene, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and Yes Man.
So what you're saying is Jim Carrey is going to buy AEW.
I would think you might have a great bet for that to happen. Tony Khan runs out of money, and after betting on too many, illicit activities, and from there, what do you know? Jim Carrey bails the day.
And instead of it's Wednesday, you know what that means. Every episode of Dynamite starts off with "All righty then."
Let me show you something.
All right, so we're not actually here to talk about Jim Carrey's bank account. We're here to talk about more NXT stuff. We're starting another new series. For those of you that have been paying attention on the channel so far, Jake and I have done a pretty decent 3-part rundown on the women's division of NXT. Guapo and I came back in kind, to be fair, and did a 2-part series on the tag team division of AEW. We're here to talk about the Cruiserweight division, because Jake, you and I have talked about for a long time, one of the huge success stories of NXT since coming to regular TV was their adoption of the Cruiserweight Championship.
Yeah, their addition of, well, theft, really, but they took the Cruiserweight title, made it their own, and although they didn't stop 205 Live from existing, they did procure most of their talent to compete on the NXT roster, and they weren't getting the shine or recognition they deserved on Raw because of how they were showcased. They would come out at the 10 o'clock hour every week, and the announcers would treat them like Cirque du Soleil, be like, look, they can do flips and stuff. Isn't this great? And then the matches would end in 3 minutes or some silly DQ, no contest, BS ending. And then there would be no feuds or stories or any bit of character, driven content. So you just didn't care about them. And then 205 Live was actually a great show for quite some time. But people weren't staying to watch it live.
I was going to say, the problem is it wasn't its own show.
SmackDown. Yeah, and it didn't have its own thing. So it never got the recognition it deserved. So thankfully they were able to make something worthwhile out of the division.
I mean, they film it right now at the CWC, but when before the world was, shut down in the before time in the long ago, it was always being filmed right after SmackDown, and nobody was sticking around for it, including myself when I sent you guys the picture of the tarps. And then they said they were going to, switch it and film it before SmackDown instead, and my immediate reaction was nobody's going to be there. Nobody's going to come to the arena an hour earlier for 205 Live.
Yeah, people are either going to show up later or they're going to leave early. That's all there is to it, because you're still not giving them a reason to watch. And I'll tell you what, when Joe and I went to SmackDown that night, when Gronk was there and AJ and Shane McMahon were fighting before their WrestleMania build and all that stuff, they put Shane, got put through the announce table or vice versa, and, all this great stuff's going on. The best thing we saw that entire night was a match with Mustafa Ali.
Yeah.
On the 205 Live segment. And I forget who he faced. I think it was Dorado. I'm not sure. Actually, no, it was Neville. He was still the Cruiserweight champion. Neville was. And let me tell you, Spaz, that was probably one of my best memories in wrestling from that year. That's how stellar that match was. But people were barely invested in watching around us. And I'm like, this is wrestling. What are you guys doing? It wasn't all just, monkey spots and flipping around and crazy stuff. It was great story in this match as well. Really cool title defense, and Ali's great as well, as you know. So I was so thankful NXT utilized them in a better fashion. And now with the Shawn Michaels surprise last night,
oh my
God, that was emotionally incredible.
How long have we been saying that the one thing that's going to happen in the Cruiserweight division is Devlin is going to have to come back and address the fact that there's two two cruiserweight champions right now. And Shawn Michaels, I don't know why people are crapping on this. Oh, just another old guy taking up the time slot. It's like, no, he came in. He's got history with a ladder match. He basically, like, saw what was happening in the ring, tossed them a ladder, gave them sort of the salute, the nod of approval, didn't say a word, and now we're going to get a great match. Now, some people's opinion of Jordan Devlin notwithstanding, this is going to be great.
This is going to be great. We've been waiting for this for quite some time.
TakeOver in general, we're going to obviously preview TakeOver next week, and it's going to be a long pod, I think. But we're
Absolutely. But like you said, Shawn here is known specifically for, ladder matches. That's one of his fortes. Mr. WrestleMania, Christ, the ladder matches he's had.
Specifically the ladder match with Razor Ramon when there were two intercontinental champions, and they had to unify them. They had to have the undisputed champion. This is the mirror situation, and is everybody saying, "Oh, are you saying these guys are as good as Shawn Michaels?" Maybe not, but the situation is a mirror, and for him to. We know he's involved in NXT. That's no secret.
Santos Escobar isn't far away from what Shawn is.
Right, for sure. And Devlin is in a slightly different way. Devlin is mini Balor. Like, if Balor was a little more high-flying, he'd be Devlin, or if Devlin was a little bit older, he'd be Balor. But I think, like, the slightest, quietest sort of, like, nod of respect from Shawn Michaels is a huge thing. That's a huge thing for two guys like this.
That's massive for them to have him not only give them that, utmost respect, but then to also go ahead and present them with, here's my tool of trade. This is the best way to solve your feud. Now get it done. That's so impactful. That's got so much emotion.
It's that simple message of, like, here's one of these things that I'm known for. I bet you guys could kick ass with this. And it's not like he even cut, like, right now, typically, if you get Shawn Michaels, he's got some really, like, a little bit of ha-ha, a little bit of self-deprecating humor, and hey, let me tell you about these guys you're about to see. There was none of that. It was a quick tip of the hat, and I thought it was so cool, and I couldn't believe the amount of people that like want to be down on stuff that were down on that, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, can you tell me the match is going to be bad? No, you can't. So fuck off. Anyways, so we're treating
the thing that people forget.
We're treating this one a little bit differently than we did with the women's division of NXT, because women's division of NXT is massive, and we took our time talking about that. We're sort of flipping the script this time around and saying, look, there's a title here, there's the potential for a division here. Let's add a couple more names. Now, what I've done here is I've assembled a list. Jake already has seen it. There's no surprises this time. This isn't like me pitching a fix to NXT where I didn't tell him anything. But I've got some names on here that are sort of from all over the place. Some from the main roster that I want to bring back to NXT. Some in Impact or AEW that I would like to see on the NXT side. Some that just haven't been seen at all in the past little while. So it's a nice little mix. And there are a few on here that I'm going to bring them over because they're associated with such and such, and we're going to, I think, inconsequentially, by adding these people to the Cruiserweight division, we're going to be adding to other divisions as we go. But these are just some people that I would like to see on the Black and Gold brand as part of that Cruiserweight division that I think could make it a lot of fun. And the first one is pretty damn simple, because we've already kind of seen it this year when we first started off the Dusty Classic, and that's the Lucha House Party. But when I say the Lucha House Party, I say all three of them: Grand Metalik, Lince Dorado, and Kalisto, because I don't know why Kalisto wasn't brought in before. I don't think necessarily like top of the card, but these are all like solid in-hand people that if you're not going to push them as individuals or a team themselves, they could be instrumental in developing whoever you do want to be at the top of that division.
Yeah, no doubt.
Kalisto specifically, actually, like, I don't know how. I mean, I know he was brought in initially as a tag team partner for Sin Cara, and that sort of went to the wayside. And then we did the Lucha House Party, as we know them on the main roster. A lot of comedy, you know, with the noisemakers and the piñatas and what that kind of thing.
The Mexican garb that they had to, you know, traditionalize them with and make them, you know, stereotypical as possible. They do it with everybody, but That was always a disappointment. Now, these three can go. We've always known that. You know, when they took on, I think it was which Rumble was it? They had a 6-man tag against TJP, Gulak, and Gallagher, however you say his name.
Yep.
And that was a hell of a match.
Gentleman Jack.
Yep, at that point in time. And the thing is, Kalisto's never been someone that I've been enamored with, but Grand Metalik, he's never disappointed from what I've seen. And Lince Dorado has a lot of promise too, especially as a solo star. These guys, I mean, the lucha style they rely heavily on, which isn't always for me, but they can deliver and they can be entertaining, and even more so, they're over with the younger audience. So these guys are money if utilized right.
I was going to say, like, if you did go and I don't want to bring I don't want to bring a whole lot of cheesy elements to NXT. I think the cheesy elements they do have, they pull off the right way, but I think you can overdo that. But if you
talking like calzones or moot sticks? What are we going with here? What kind of cheesy?
Oh dear. Well,
cheesy
okay.
bread?
A critical person would come to me and say, well, you like Shotzi Blackheart. What's the deal with the cheesy tank? Like, that kind of thing. Like, I think
string cheese?
Oh my god. Dick cheese. Anyways, no, but like I
get what you're saying. People have like, oh, why is that so? But the tank works for me because of the backstory for it. They explained it.
But like, there's things that don't exactly float my boat all the time. Like Dexter Lumis, I find to be a cheesy, one-dimensional character. But there are other people out there.
But he's one not being utilized or handled right because they could have a serial killer gimmick. This one's just not the right way to do it.
But see, here's my thing though, and here's where I take a step back though. And I do say, because I wouldn't say NXT is as directed at kids as main roster WWE by a long shot. So if they did want to bring the Lucha House Party in just to be something fun, something flashy, colorful, a little cartoony, and like they could be like that one thing at NXT that sort of might be for kids, I could get into that. I could be okay with that. It's like, okay, this is the one part of the show that's maybe not directed at me, but somebody else is really getting something out of it. But the other side of the coin is Lince and Grand Metalik. We saw them in the Cruiserweight Classic. And
that's right. I always forget about that too.
There was nothing funny or cheesy about them in the Cruiserweight Classic. I was happy just because like luchadors has never been a thing that's been like overly done in WWE. You got Rey Mysterio in there for like years and years and years, and there we have a luchador. What's
did
your
they
problem
not compete in the Dusty Classic as well?
They did this year. I think they went out first or second round to.
But still, they were not joking around then.
Well, yeah. Well, they were brought onto the NXT TV just to feud with Wild and Mendoza for a little bit, and they still came out. They still had like sort of the happy, upbeat music, and they were like a little bit celebratory with the crowd, but not nearly to the level they are on the main roster. And like I say,
but you figure they were still on the main roster at this point, just brought in to fill out things because Metalik and Dorado were drafted to Raw. Kalisto obviously is not with the group anymore, but then they frame him with the group in NXT, and so you don't know which end is up or what, but.
Yeah, I did like the fact that they brought them in specifically because they were able to enhance Phantasma's style. Obviously, they know that style.
Well, that's a fact. You know, Santos and everyone, you know, it's just been Wild's been great as well.
I thought that would have been a slam dunk to reunite them with Kalisto and have that. That's a trios match waiting to happen.
It is. I see that.
But no, like to my example of if you're not going to feature them specifically, you can definitely have them as sort of, I hate to say this because it sounds like I'm putting them down, but like in-ring mechanics or building blocks type thing. Like you could have on the Go Home episode of NXT, we've got Devlin versus Escobar coming up soon. You could have Devlin have a match with Lince Dorado just to be like, hey, let me show you what I'm going to do to you next Thursday. And then, you know, the other one takes on Escobar and is like, oh, yeah, well, let me show you how fast I beat this guy. And they could be just the guys in there to make other people look. They could be the Lucha Zigglers for NXT.
Lucha Zigglers. I like that.
But, like, and I have to keep saying, like, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but, like, it takes a certain thing to do that. If you're not the main event, if you can at least be part of making that main event look good, you are in fact serving a role in and of themselves. So I think any one of them individually is a great contribution to the Cruiserweight division, but to have them there as sort of a loosely defined unit to have some trios matches, to have some tag matches, to maybe get in the tag picture as well. I think you get a lot of different benefits from the Lucha House Party, and it's something you don't have to make super serious. Because one criticism that NXT gets quite a lot, and especially leading into this particular pay-per-view, everything is serious. Cross and Balor is serious. Cole
everything has that very tense,
gritty,
serious, gritty,
like grit your teeth
yes.
Feel to it. It might be good for NXT, and I'm trying to be objective as I can because I'm biased.
Everything's very consequential and finite.
Yeah, but everything has a high intensity, and everything's a high stake all the time. It might do some good, and I'm saying this carefully, to have something a little bit silly to break that up a little bit.
Not full-on comedy angle, but have an angle that features a little bit of comedy.
Yeah, I think you get that. I think a lot of people are getting that from Grimes right now. I get that from, right now, Shotzi and Ember, who are a legitimate set of champions, but also they look like they're having a good time. And to a lesser extent, the Gargano family stuff, we know they're all great wrestlers, but they're having a good time, and that breaks up, friggin' Cole and O'Reilly sounding like they're choking on their words as they try to cut a promo on each other. So I think as well as the skills they can bring to the ring, the skills that are being completely wasted on the main roster, it could bring some levity to the show as well, and I think that's going to go underappreciated.
No doubt about it, sadly.
Okay, it's sort of an ex-WWE thing, but more of a Impact thing. I've been watching a little bit of Impact every here and there just because of the ties with AEW and some of the stuff that's going on there. We had TJP coming off the first ever Cruiserweight Classic, who, TJ Perkins became TJP, and then you realize that he played Suicide and Manic when he was in
And it's
Impact.
funny with the Suicide thing, too, because the way that they wanted to go ahead and bring this on was just a video game character that TNA had inside. I forget which game it was. It was one of their...
that's right.
TNA
it was just like a random
Impact.
playable character, and then they wanted to bring it to life.
And Low Key was actually the voice. And then it became so popular that people in TNA just started being like, oh, let's turn this into a match. And he was played by a bunch of different people throughout the years.
I was going to say, Daniels was Suicide at one point. Kazarian was Suicide at one point.
Yep.
And then in the sort of Hulk Hogan era...
Eric Young.
Was it Eric Young as well?
He had a match briefly, I guess it says here. So did, let's see, there's a few others. Wow, it's pretty crazy, but TJ Perkins, obviously.
Yeah.
And then post that, they did, what's his name? The guy that was the real jerk to work with. I always forget his name.
A lot of people in the wrestling business.
Yeah, he was in 205 Live. He was a Cruiserweight champion. Austin Aries.
Oh. See, I like Austin Aries.
He was under the Suicide Mask at one point in time, too, I believe, too. That was like a...
Actually, that's somebody I'm surprised I didn't put on the list, because I would love to see Austin Aries back. He might be
He was always great in the ring, but my God, was he just...
Oh, he's an asshole on social. He pushes
so.
all of his social agendas on social media and all that, and I don't agree with anything he says. And I even met him, and he was kind of a dick when I met him at Destiny. Check it off your Spaz Phoenix bucket list. I saw here's one for you. I got this for you right here, right now. Pete Dunne versus Austin Aries versus James Ellsworth.
Jesus.
In a triple threat match for the Destiny Championship.
Wow.
Because James Ellsworth won a battle royal at the beginning of the night, which was it was the cash it in briefcase.
Oh, I swear I've heard you mention this at some point.
Probably. Well, because it was initially marketed, obviously, as Pete Dunne versus Austin Aries. Which, whether you like the guys or not, that match sells itself.
Oh, no doubt about it. And there's a reason for it, so.
But
I like TJ Perkins' run in WWE. He did really, really well.
Because he literally was a video game character when they brought him to the main roster, that music and everything.
And they had him, and then all of a sudden he's like, he does the attack on Austin Aries, and it's like now he's teaming up with Neville and turning heel, and he changes his name just to TJP, and then from there they just didn't know what to do with him, and eventually he was released, and that was 3 years worth of just not knowing how to handle him. He was one of the first, if not the first, cruiserweight champion, I believe. He was one of the ones up there.
Yeah.
And he did really, really well.
Well, he was the first cruiserweight champion because he won the CWC.
Yeah.
And because
that's what it was. He won the contest. I knew there was something to it, and I was
remember
like, wow,
they never told us
by him.
They never told us that there was going to be a championship or a division. We thought this was just this sort of like outside thing, and then Triple H presented him with the belt. And if it hadn't been like the grape flavored fruit roll up, like that would have been a big thing.
Yeah, it would have been a great thing, because I forgot about the Cruiserweight Championship at first there, because he defeated Tyler Bate in the first round, and then he beat Cedric Alexander in the quarterfinals, and then
that was the please sign Cedric moment.
Yep. And then after that, he had many feuds with like Lucha House Party and Kalisto and Metalik and Lince Dorado.
Yeah.
And then he got an alliance with Mike and Maria briefly, and then it's like, all right, we got Worlds Collide. He gets taken out by Dijakovic, and then shortly after that, he loses to Humberto Carrillo, and we don't see him again. His contract runs out. At least now he's doing better in Impact, but he was someone that I would love to see back on the NXT cruiserweight side of things. They could really bolster their division with him being added. He's got a lot of star power as a face and heel.
There's one other person here that I also haven't put on this list, and it's kind of funny because we just got his two friends in the form of MSK, but the third member of the Rascals is another person that I saw at Destiny Chat your Spaz Phoenix bucket list twice, and that's Trey Miguel. And I've seen these two guys tear it up recently on Impact. I would love to see that recreated in NXT. I would love to have Trey Miguel on over there with his MSK buddies as well, but I think he's sort of carving himself a different path on Impact now. But I don't know what you think about this, because especially recently, when you have sort of dualities like Bray Wyatt and The Fiend, we have dualities like Balor and obviously the Demon. I wouldn't mind, because it's something different for a cruiserweight division. It's something different for... I mean, I don't know how you would ever do it in a tag team division. It would be totally insane. But I wouldn't mind this, like, three faces of TJP, like some TJP and Manic and Suicide. I don't know how that would play in a specifically cruiserweight division, other than if you established like TJP is just like base level, and then, if it's a really high pressure situation, he becomes Manic, and if it's a really raging feud, it becomes Suicide, and like you gradually like ramp up the either the high risk or the high intensity. Like if you could establish a difference. Because Finn Balor is the example. I'm not going to go with The Fiend right now because The Fiend is kind of crispy right now. It's fine. But Balor fights differently when he's the Demon. Like there is a genuine
a difference in style.
There is a genuine personality
ferocity.
change there. And I do see that with the brief glimpses, especially recently, that I've seen on Impact when he's taken on the monikers of Manic and or Suicide. I would love to bring, because that's not just an in-ring thing. That's a character building thing. That's a story arc that you could have with a couple of people. That's you don't want to crank this up to the next level. Business just picked up, as JR would say. I think bringing an element like that to a specific division, like the Cruiserweight division, could have a really cool effect. And I think there's a lot of different psychological ways you could go with that. You could replay what they've done in Impact where, oh my god, I think Suicide is TJP, and then somebody else puts the hood on, and then TJP
constantly
TJP and Suicide have a match against somebody, but then you do the Hulk Hogan Mr. America thing, the wink and the nod, maybe lift up the mask and wink at the crowd, or like there's so much cool things you can play with that, and that's a storytelling tool. Like I say, it's a character tool. It's a huge credit to him to basically play three characters. I'm loath to make the Mick Foley comparison because I think that's a really high standard to set, but it could be the 2021 cruiserweight version of that, and I think something that diverse and flexible again would lighten up NXT a little bit. And
It
again,
certainly would.
and with Lucha House Party, we're trying to lighten up NXT a little bit. With TJP Suicide Manic, we're trying to lighten up NXT a little bit, do something a little bit more creative, a little more outside the box. What could be more outside the box than me reaching over into Impact one more time and picking out Crazy Steve?
Crazy Steve.
Now, as I said before, I'm bringing people in so that I can also bring in other people. With the arrival of Crazy Steve, I would obviously want to bring over Rosemary, who would be another completely different element to contribute to the women's division. I would also, I don't know how recently you've watched Impact.
It's been a while. The only thing I've seen is what it happens to do with AEW. I can't get myself back into Impact. Fool me once.
Have you seen Black Taurus?
Yes.
The big, huge fucker that's with Crazy
Decay.
Steve. Can you imagine Crazy Steve walking around with the Cruiserweight Championship with this big, massive, like, literal man beast watching his back?
I can see it working, and not because, like, oh, NXT is God, they do everything. No, but I think they know what they have for their talent and what they have for their strengths. And Impact never focused on Crazy Steve's strengths, which is his outlandish character.
Yeah. Well, they did back in the day, and
they did briefly when they had the feud with the Hardys and stuff, and it started to get them over big, and then they focused again on Abyss and the female version, I forget what her name is, and they put Crazy Steve back in the background, and,
You're talking
and
about
it
Rosemary.
just kind of floundered.
Are you talking about Rosemary, the one that was with...
Rosemary. Yeah. There we go.
Because I think she's a lot... Like, obviously, it's me. I like those kind of characters anyway. Give me Demon Finn Balor. Give me the Fiend, even with the cock fingers. Give me the Boogeyman. Give me the Boogeyman. Give me Mordecai and Kevin Thorne from back in the day. Give me all those characters. The fact that I like Decay isn't going to surprise anybody, right?
No, I think so.
But like, can you imagine that they make their arrival and then you have some random scene where, okay, Rosemary gets a shot at the women's title, Crazy Steve gets his hands on the Cruiserweight Championship somehow, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like, Black Taurus, like, busts down Johnny Gargano's door and Johnny Gargano shits himself.
Just right there,
Because as a lot of people have said, Black Taurus, or it's either Taurus or Taurus, depending on how you pronounce it, but they're basically saying that it's El Torito all grown up.
Oh God, that's funny.
But I don't know how he fights with the mask on. Anyways, that's not the point. He's not a cruiserweight.
Yeah, but Black Taurus is an impressive specimen. But Crazy Steve, going back, I mean, he made his debut in wrestling in what, 2003? And then all the way up until 2014 worked for GCW and just a long time to be in the same independent circuit. Finally makes it to Impact, starts off in the Menagerie, and then gets into Decay. Decay with the Hardys is where they really got to excel. You know, first they start having this great feud with Beer Money. Then they, take out Jeff Hardy and James Storm, and then they get involved with Matt and the Broken Stuff and all of that. And then he basically left Impact slowly after, not long after the Hardys did.
The second final deletion was Delete or Decay.
Yeah.
And you know what? And they're characters that are, we said last year during Halloween Havoc, I don't really like Grimes, I don't really like Loomis, but this haunted house match that they're going to have seems like all the pieces are going to fit together because Loomis is trying to be this serial killer or whatever. Like, look at something like Decay. Decay was perfect for something like the broken universe that Matt Hardy had created. Now,
absolutely.
I'm not saying I want to force more cinematic matches, especially on NXT, but you can have those creepy, weird element things, and it doesn't always have to be two guys in black trunks having a 5-star match at the Tokyo Dome, brother. Mm-hmm. Like, it does have to be a variety show, and I like the fucked up shit, and I want to see Rosemary, like, step on Shotzi's tank or something, like...
Something interesting and
something
outlandish.
Fun.
But not to the point where it's so fantastical.
No.
At least for me, like... If something makes sense and it's unrealistic, but you can see why they were heading to that assumption or that point, then I'm okay with it. But when you go ahead and you get the total bullshit where it's just like, oh, we did this just like the other night with Alexa throwing fireballs into Randy's face and all that. Nothing about what she's been explained to be able to do, makes sense, and it was just done because lazy booking.
But
That's what it comes down to.
Can you imagine Rosemary and Black Taurus versus Alexa Bliss and The Fiend?
It would be good, I bet.
But,
I bet it'd be damn good.
No, the thing that I love about the weird character is, and I'm using that as sort of a broad spectrum, is because it's as much the opponents as it is them. Because you're going to get the chicken shit heels that are going to do the comical chase around the ring. You're going to get sort of like the more intense, like we said before, like the grit your teeth kind of people, like getting all perplexed and trying to figure them out and whatnot. And it's one of those things where like you look at the monster, but a little bit of you is like watching other people looking at the monster. And again, I don't think that's something that we have a whole lot of in NXT. They're trying a little too hard on the main roster right now with some of that stuff. And I mean, Braun Strowman has a choo-choo train sound now. Like, can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, right.
I don't know. It's not going to, like I say, it's not going to be 5-star matches for the Cruiserweight Championship necessarily. I just think for the wrestling is supposed to be a variety show aspect of it, it'd be a fun addition. And like I said, with Crazy Steve comes 2 other additions for 2 of your other rosters. Either you got an addition to the heavyweight division, or the 2 of them become an addition to the tag team division. She comes in and she adds herself to the women's division. Like, there's a lot of, as we go through this is going to be 3 episodes. There's a lot of people that I'm going to mention that also bring other people with them.
Yeah, I don't know the right. Not that they have baggage. That's not what we're trying to say.
But positive baggage. Positive baggage.
Yeah, but they have
a
+1, obviously. So most times.
One. Well, any one member of the Lucha House Party brings 2 other members with them. Like, if you want to look at it that way.
They can fit their whole family in that suitcase, but
we can store them safely in the overhead compartment. I'm a terrible person, and I'm probably going to hell. Now, we're going a little bit wacky. We're going a little bit cool. We're going, multiple personalities, we're going crazy people, we're going big bulls, we're going luchadors. How about we go back down and simplify it and just bring in a hell of a good wrestler who's mostly...
I couldn't be more excited for.
Mostly known as a tag team guy, but I've always been curious to see what he does as a singles guy, especially because he's so fucking animated. Bring in Dawkins if you want, but give me Montez Ford specifically in the Cruiserweight division, and let's see him doing some one-on-one shit. If Lio Rush was still in NXT, this match should have already happened by now.
Oh, I wish he was. And even Leon Ruff.
Sure.
Basically the same person, but they can go ahead and have those matches as well. I could totally see that working, but Montez, my God. I mean, they were great in NXT. But
I will say, although I love
Dawkins is fantastic.
Yep.
He's the bigger guy, so that's what people people.
And he plays that role well. Let's be fair. Like, he plays the grounded heavy of their group really, really well.
Absolutely.
And I'm gonna have to stop saying this soon, but I mean this in a positive way. He brings himself back about a half step so that Montez Ford can go ahead a half step.
You got to see them at Evolve, right?
I didn't know.
Oh, you didn't get to see them when they were teaming with Touch a Team Dream and all that?
No, I didn't.
They took on Leon Ruff, go figure, Austin Theory, Harlem Bravado, who else? Chris Dickinson. They had quite a few matches at Evolve. Evolve 114, 123, 124. I didn't know if you saw any of that, but
I am not going to lie to you. The only Evolve show that I have seen is the one that got put up on the WWE Network. You know, when they were so mean and did such a bad thing, like giving another company some exposure?
Exactly.
And I'm not going to lie.
Rotten.
I'm not going to lie. Again, further Destiny Wrestling bias. The only thing that made me tune into that show was knowing that Shotzi Blackheart was on it. And the match that I can't even remember who she was facing, but when she took the suicide dive into the 4 chairs, I was like, that's my girl. That's
That's
the girl.
Chauncey for you.
That's the girl that's going to bring hardcore wrestling to the women's division on NXT, and I love it. But that's another
But
conversation for another day.
if you look at it's not what they had to say was bad. But if you look at the Street Profits promo ability on Raw, when they were saying things that weren't totally cringy script garbage, they were exciting, they were motivating, they were enticing, they got you hyped up for their match, or for even when it wasn't their match, and they were just telling you about what was on the card.
Oh, when they were doing the weird
going.
backstage hosting thing.
Yes.
Right? And see, here's the thing. And
they did a good job with that, too.
Here's a really weird comparison, right? How many times do you think you're going to get into a conversation with me or anybody and put the Street Profits and the Miz in the same category?
Yeah, exactly. It almost feels like night and day.
Literally. But anyway, but if you remember Miz in his early days, he was marketed as the quote-unquote host of SmackDown.
Yes.
And I thought that was really good. I thought that was really cool. That was
I see that point. The parallel you're going and hinting towards, and that's a great point, because I could see Ford being in that position not long from now. Just like the next person on your list that I was so in love with in the straightest way possible, but this was one of my favorites.
We're going to get to him in a second. I am going to say, though, because we are talking about character as well as in-ring ability, Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins are obviously a team. They're obviously linked. They've obviously had their success on both rosters. And they're
character-driven, and they have their funny moments, but they could be serious, too. And they work so well as a tag team. They are almost constantly in sync no matter what.
But even in promos, right? And the other thing I wanted to give them credit for was, you say, even though they were sometimes given, shitty, cringy material, if you can give me shitty, cringy material and do it well, that's better than giving me good material sometimes, because that's the ultimate creativity flex, right?
Exactly.
But them as a promo is almost the same as them in the ring, in the sense that what's a good comparison? Montez Ford is the Jeff Hardy.
Okay.
Whereas Matt Hardy's just as good, he's just not as flashy, so the more the focus goes to Ford. Even in a promo, you talk about something like Adam Cole doing the Adam Cole baby, the call and response thing. It seems like, not with the fans, but it seems like those two guys have a call and response with each other that the only other team I can really think of is when the Usos first went from the big guys in the bright face paint and the bright shorts to how we know them now, and
dancing with the pyro to the Uso Penitentiary. That's
right.
A good point.
And they would come into the ring and they wouldn't even have music playing, and they would just be cutting a promo, and it would be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Very, very similar category to how Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins are now. Ford and Dawkins are a lot more entertaining, whereas the Usos were a lot more intense. But for me to put them in the same category as the Usos, please understand, everybody listening to me, is incredibly high praise from me. Because those guys, the Usos, took their gimmick and changed it on a dime to do what they became, and now we see what Jey Uso's become now as well. I'd love to see Montez Ford shine as a solo. I will say the downside of this is if they come across as a team and then he gets the Cruiserweight Championship, I don't know how much of a following Dawkins gets as a solo wrestler. I'm just being honest. But interesting enough to try. Or it's interesting enough to go for the tag titles when one of you is already the Cruiserweight Champion, and you can... I know we don't want to double up titles too much, but it's an interesting thing to go up against. Now, I want to talk about promos. Jake, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How you doing?
We're doing.
How you doing?
How you doing, baby?
How you doing?
How you doing?
If Sasha Banks had as many dicks out of her as she did in her, she'd look like a porcupine. How you doing?
How you doing?
Good Lord, you want to talk about character and promo over actual in-ring work? Please bring me Enzo Amore.
And that's the thing that Enzo always had that I was completely in love with. He said it after he got let go. I've mentioned it dozens of times on Joe's show and elsewhere. But he could not be more right. You have guys shortening their careers by doing these death-defying stunts.
Yeah.
Enzo got more of a reaction by shuffling his feet back and forth on the apron.
Yep.
How can you argue with that? He said literally, I'd shuffle my feet back and forth and go, oh, more, and people would go insane. Even when I was a heel, they'd either boo me or they'd be nuts and cheer me. We would cut these promos so that by the time we got to the match, people would be so hyped up, we would be able to hit 2 moves and end it and not have to showcase the fact that we were green because we had the crowd eating from the palm of our hand. You need that at times. No, you eventually have to branch out and put on some stellar matches. But they were doing that slowly too. They were getting better in the ring. That's why I hate that, one, they were split up. I get the drama behind it and people were surprised, but the payoff was so piss poor because we didn't get anything really from either one of them. Enzo shortly later got let go. He went on this great cruiserweight champion role and barely got to utilize what we were given. So
I was going to say, the matches weren't the best, I'll admit that, but Enzo Amore versus King Neville. Come on. Like, that feud was great.
I loved it.
It was, like, for me...
He can't touch me and getting on his nerves. It sucks that's why Neville walked. He felt so disrespected, but...
But see, like, for me, right, because I'm... I watch AEW now, and because I watch NXT, I do listen to, like, oh, this person's coming from here next, and I keep my ear to the ground a little bit more. You tell me a lot of stuff. Guapo tells me a lot of stuff. I listen to you and Joe, and I hear about some other stuff. But my view is still pretty WWE-centric, right? So seeing Neville, and I've been watching old takeovers recently, and seeing, like smiling white bread babyface Neville, and not having seen anything from Pac before that, I think Enzo brought Pac out of Neville, like, for the little bit that we got it before Neville went and fucked off to AEW.
Yeah,
and I think it worked. Like, I don't think Enzo was playing particularly a face. He was just playing somebody that was pissing everybody off. But what I liked about Enzo is, as much as the cruiserweight division as a whole has to be different, it has to be high energy, it has to be like, okay, you have to watch these smaller guys because they can do things that other people can't.
Exactly. They may not have the size advantage, but the speed makes up for what they lack in power.
But I do want to keep a close eye on that stereotype, though,
because they're disproving it often.
Right. But that does, like, I wanna, and we're gonna get, there's people specifically in parts 2 and 3 of this pod that we're gonna talk about. They're gonna be better examples of this, right? Smaller guys that can do things that the bigger guys can't doesn't mean, 25 rotation Hurricane Ranas and Canadian Destroyers to start the match every night.
Yeah, you don't need the super fast hot start off. Yeah. I mean, every now and again to get like a crazy pop, but to have these matches start with such explosions also leads to just total nonsense.
And what did Enzo do? Like, his one top rope thing was like that weird, like almost intentionally awkward top rope DDT thing that he did. And it's like it was like he created one high flying move to make fun of the high flyers.
Exactly.
And I'm like, if that's not intentional, it's an amazing accident.
No doubt about it.
As a character, I still go back to it now, and we can talk about everything that led to Enzo being released, and all the downsides of Me Too, especially when Me Too is bullshit. You don't have to agree with me. I'm saying it for my own sake.
No, but when it's bullshit, that's what drives me nuts.
You know what I love? Okay, I'm going to go on a tip for just a second here, because we've only got one more person.
And that's why you should be able to believe a woman, but you can't.
But this is the thing, though, right? I'm going to go on a tear for a little bit. I love the fact that this particular woman, I can't remember her name, she was from Phoenix, so that sticks out in my head. But, like, she makes up all this bullshit about him, literally costs him his career in many senses, right?
Yeah, entirely.
He gets found innocent, still doesn't get his job back, still doesn't get his life back, writes a song about his experience called Phoenix, and gets labeled as the bad guy again for picking on her.
Yes, because he was so misogynistic and abusive, and and Enzo, he started off really, making his debut in 2003.
Yeah.
even though that's really not, he was doing it for Dreamwave Wrestling, and it was just various small promotions, and he was their former heavyweight champion. I can't even envision how he was doing for those 13 years from 2003 to 16. Then obviously he's able to get into NXT, and then Raw not that long after. Him and Big Cass make it big, so on and so forth. But
yeah, and unfortunately, like you say again, I'll never understand the idea of breaking them up, because a lot like the Dawkins thing that I mentioned a second ago, I don't know how many people would have gotten behind Cass as a solo act, even if the split had been done well. I don't think him as a solo, like he was the grounding, he was the base for what was basically the Enzo act.
Yeah, because you figure, he really didn't have anything before that. It was just, I was talking about Mustafa Ali, with Enzo, for his stuff, he starts 2012, he gets into, what was it, Joe DeFranco's training gym, because he sent a video to Triple H that he saw on YouTube, and then Triple H is like, holy crap, I like this guy's promo abilities, gets him into NXT, and him and Cass get down there, and that's what it turns into, and they work with Carmella, it takes off, becomes white hot. 2017, they make it, or what was it, 2016, towards the end in July, I believe they made it to the draft and main roster. And from there, it was just bada bing, bada boom, realest guys in the room, and they never had some great angles. They had some okay stuff, but the feud with Jericho and Owens, where they lost, I was like, well, that's disappointing. Then the whole shark cage stuff, that was embarrassing.
Brett making him strip down to his boxers and try to grease himself out of the trap and shit.
Yeah, exactly. Losing against the Club, Luke and Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, being eliminated by Lesnar in the Rumble. Like they didn't have anything. They lost feuding with Enzo. Enzo and Cass lost feuding with Rusev and Jinder. Like they never had a stellar run. They constantly just lost and lost and lost. And had WWE put any real effort behind them and given them a chance to succeed, they really could have been something super special.
I will say, though, and this is probably something that worked against him in the long run, but he's a lot like, did you see the Eli Drake match last night with Bronson Reed?
Yes.
So, okay, so
Which a lot of people are saying he's buried already.
No, that's crap. He's doing a very difficult role, which is go out there and be the guy that thinks he's the star of the show and then get comically destroyed. Well, realistically, who was better at going out there and pissing absolutely everybody off and then getting absolutely comically destroyed? Enzo Amore.
Oh, Enzo was great about it.
I love the guy, but he took an ass beating.
He had the ego, bigger than anybody's in the room.
Yep.
And he couldn't back it up, but he thought he could. And that's what made it so just damn entertaining.
Yeah. And before we get off Enzo, we'd be remiss if we didn't end it sort of on a happy note. Just the recent news with Cass getting over some of the stuff that he's been dealing. I know he's not a cruiserweight, but I'm going to stick it in here anyway.
Yeah,
just really nice to hear. Like, I'm not going to
indie scene.
Yeah, like I'm obviously not going to see, like, if they're at some indie show, it's not going to make its way up to me unless it hits YouTube. But it's just nice to know that it's out there.
It's a happy feeling to know that something went right for once.
I like there is, I think it was in Times Square, when the last day of Enzo's legal bullshit with the chick from Phoenix, it was his last day in court. He was fully acquitted because obviously he didn't do anything. But innocent dudes don't exist in 2021. It's fine.
Nope.
But when he got out of his car in Times Square in New York, there's footage of it. And the amount of people that just got behind him because they knew he got fucked and they pulled himself back out of it. He wasn't there. He wasn't there to perform. He wasn't there to do a rap or a musical performance. He obviously wasn't there to wrestle because there was nobody to wrestle. But just the amount of people that were just like, dude, you almost got fucked, and we're happy you didn't get fucked. And I saw that, and it was a shitty cell phone Instagram video of a couple of seconds of response, and holy crap. If you could bottle that response and put it in an arena, Vince could make some money.
Yeah, no kidding. He would be a very happy camper. That's for damn
And
sure.
I just, you know what? Like, it's one of the few times that I will say this. I don't care if it is on the main roster. I don't care if it is on Raw or SmackDown. I just want Enzo back on my TV in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, NXT Cruiserweight division would be great because NXT is my brand and I have my biases, etc., etc. I just want him to pop back up somewhere. Everybody said, like, oh, you know, he's going to show up in AEW and that's going to totally ruin AEW. I hope it does go ruin AEW. Let him go bitch slap friggin' Cody Rhodes in the face. Look at the reaction he got when he bought a ticket to SummerSlam a couple years ago.
Yeah, no kidding.
You can't put a price on that.
Or Survivor Series, right?
Survivor Series, sorry. You can't put a price on that. More people were watching him being a dickhead in the crowd than were watching the match.
He trended more
than the
that
pay-per-view.
night than anything WWE did.
And then one WrestleMania, didn't he show up at an ROH show that was happening the same night as the Hall of Fame, or
yeah, something like that.
It was the New Japan ROH like super show thing.
Yep, they showed up there, him and Big Cass.
You'd know more about that stuff than I would, obviously.
I'm terrible with all the history and names, but yep, it's
But like.
That's for sure. So I've always been a big proponent of theirs. Like you said, Big Cass is doing much better. He's sober. Yeah. He's looking amazing. He's extremely healthy now. Fucking bring it. I'm all for it. And then before I do got to get out of here, last but not least, we have one of my favorites is Mustafa Ali. Like I said to you earlier, one of the best matches I had seen in person for a long time was Mustafa Ali taking on Neville, and that was at a SmackDown 205 live taping.
Yeah.
It was stellar. Just absolutely incredible. He was the one that was studying starting in 2003. As I was saying before, I was going to Mustafa. We were still talking about Enzo. Yeah. So he started in 2003. He was in different, promotions and circuits all the way to 2016. That's when Zumbi was not able to wrestle, so Ali got the chance to replace him in the CWC. And then from there, he was obviously eliminated by Lince Dorado, but there was such a big fanfare about him and that people liked him that he came back, and he and Dorado entered the Dusty Tag Team Classic together. They were taken out by Kota Ibushi and TJ Perkins, but from there he made a name for himself, going through the whole Cruiserweight stuff and a little bit of NXT. And obviously we know that he went to the main roster, competed for a little bit, started to get a push, shortened his name to Ali, became Mustafa Ali again.
Mustafa Ali
was a SmackDown hacker, and then wasn't. Started Retribution, and now they're no more. So I'm not sure what they're doing with him. It again makes no sense, but that's why he would be one of the key elements to add to NXT's Cruiserweight division. It would fully flesh it out. He's a great evil leader. He's also a really good face. He can get people behind him with his police expertise and background, and that good guy motif. So either way,
the sad thing about that, and this is one of these things that I'm actively not going to try and turn into a political conversation for once. Right now, I don't think WWE would overly highlight the police thing.
No, certainly not. But it's an option they have in their back pocket if the temperature changes in the climate of social anxiety,
right.
That's really,
I have to say,
my point is, he's easy to get behind as a face. We've seen it work before, and he's also somebody that's a fantastic heel. So he's multifaceted. He's well diverse. He's very talented. He's great in the ring. He works through injuries. He doesn't, allow anything to slow him down. So
well, apparently he's working through an injury right now. That's why they fast tracked the Retribution breakup. That's, again, only things that I've heard, nothing concrete, obviously. But apparently the idea is they were going to break up, they were going to do that Retribution breakup angle on night one of WrestleMania. But he's been having some long-standing...
Yeah, he's having issues that he's not having surgery for, but he can't wrestle injured till then. And I was banging my head saying, you have 4 of the members of the stable. Yeah. Why does he have to wrestle when you have them? Made no sense. So
I will say though, it's a credit to him because, in a weird way, Retribution was a highlight of Raw because it was one of those things where it's like, okay, how goofy is it going to be this week? So it was a morbid fascination, but I think everybody in a different way was doing okay, what are they going to do this week type thing. We're going to put a brick through a window that's already broken, or we're going to cut the ropes with a weed whacker or whatever. As goofy as that group was, for a split second when it was revealed that he was the leader, I thought, okay, this might be salvaged. It wasn't.
It wasn't, but it wasn't his fault. He tried like no other to make it worthwhile. He did everything in his power to make this group work. He did.
And I would have never, even when it was rumored that he was going to be revealed as the SmackDown hacker, I never would have pitched him as a heel. I just
didn't see him in that
not that I don't think he's capable, but it wouldn't have been something to come first to mind.
Yeah, you just didn't foresee it that way.
No,
honestly,
I'm going to say I like him better as a heel than I do as a babyface.
I've seen him, do some brief things previously as a heel, and he's been very, very, very impressive. So he's, like I said, he's been all over the place. He's wrestled a bunch of people, so he often, used a mask just to avoid discrimination. And
really,
he was wrestling during the day and then doing night shifts as an actual police officer in Chicago. And because of the Mustafa Ali name and the Muslim hate that was going around, especially closer to 2003 onwards, he went ahead and wore a mask just to avoid having to deal with it. Going through Proving Ground Pro, Wrestling Circus, the NWA, Jersey All Pro Wrestling, IWA Mid-South, Freelance Wrestling, AAW. I can keep going. I mean, that's the point. So he's been everywhere.
Yeah. It's funny, though, that we mentioned, like, the other shows, right? Because we talk about main roster WWE, and it's basically, on the one side, there's main roster WWE, and the other side, there's NXT. But realistically, if you look at it, on one side there's the main roster WWE, and on the other side there's sort of like the network roster of WWE, which is like NXT, NXT UK, 205 Live, Cruiserweight Classic, Mae Young Classic, Dusty Classic. And, as I say, Mustafa Ali was in the Cruiserweight Classic, which is sort of NXT adjacent. He was in the Dusty Classic, which is sort of NXT adjacent. So the fact that he never actually had an NXT run it's almost bizarre. Not totally out of the realm of possibility, but it's like somebody we're going to talk about in a couple of podcasts from now, Cedric Alexander, is like, he was heavily associated with the Cruiserweight division, but was never really an NXT guy, and Ali being the same way. I think it'd be cool to see him in NXT, because I think he'd be an asset as a talent, as a character. I think, but also for him personally, that would be a great title to throw around his waist, and specifically, he's a guy I could see carrying that belt and having a nice, long NXT-style title run.
Yeah, I could certainly see that as well. And it would work out in more ways than one. No doubt about it.
And then, like, the next time Survivor Series comes around and it's like, oh, he's got a match with so-and-so because somebody from Raw wants a shot at the Cruiserweight title or something very Survivor Series-ish, and his old members of Retribution come back, but they're not masked anymore, and it's just Shane Thorne and Dominic Dijakovic and Dio Madden and Mia Yim just come and kick the shit out of him. He disbands the group. Well, the group walked away from him technically. So if the group walked away from him and he walked away from Raw to go to NXT, it's like, oh well, you didn't want to handle your unfinished business. Retribution. Where's my paper plate face? I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Anyways, that's the end of round one. We got 2 more rounds to go. Won't be next week because next week we're talking about TakeOver, but final thoughts before we close this baby up.
As we said, I mean, we've got a lot to look into, and I'm excited to see who else we have to go through the names of the next 2 episodes, plus as well as Stand and Deliver. I can't wait to cover that with you next week. So hell yeah!
And guys, there are some names that we're going to talk about from AEW. So maybe
not just WWE, not just NXT, and not just NXT UK. So
unclench your sphincters a little bit. It's going to be okay. Anyways, Jake, tell them where to find you.
You can find me on Twitter at CountdownEnded. And you can also find me on the Joe Cronin Show as a co-host over there. We cover AEW and WWE pay-per-views and television shows. So as soon as they go off the air, we go live.
And you guys know where to find me, or you wouldn't be here. I've been Spaz. He's been Jake. We are the NXT Reality Checks. Subscribe up there. Talk down there. Start a conversation. Keep all of these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I'll talk to each and every last one of you later. But for right now, me and Super Sexy Jake are tagging out. Bye, guys.